Hello again, friends, and you are my friends, and welcome back to your final third part, your part 3 of this afternoon stream, your Matchday Ticket live full-time thoughts with myself, Matt Phillips, and Joe Lever coming right up for you. Just for those that are watching on YouTube, don't forget, hit subscribe if you haven't yet already. I see we had a massive surge of subscriptions this afternoon, so thank you all very, very much. And Crozier 1974 has jumped in there and shown the way. Town fans, this is your platform, your time to tell your thoughts, share your thoughts. Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You can get involved either by the chat, so write a comment, how Crozier here has done, or if you'd like to appear on the show and see less of me, less of Matt, which Twitter tells me you want to see less of Matt, and YouTube want to get involved, then of course just hit the words link into the chat box, any chat box, whatever you're on, and I'll make sure a link gets to you to have your say. So Crozier is very true there, very tidy and solid second half. James Chadwick on YouTube comes up. In Derby looks quality. Ken Locks, I won't mention that just because a bit unfair to Miles playing against Premier League, Champions League opposition. The Cruncher comes in. Anyone seen Idris El Mizani? Last seen scoring an absolute banger. I'll make sure my Dar knows that. So I'll bring Matt in. Good afternoon, good evening now, I suppose. Matthew, how are we?
Good, thanks. Yeah, I enjoyed the game, to be honest with you. Both halves. As some of the guys are saying there in the comments, much better performance in the second half. I mean, it did help, I suppose, that as the game went on, Spurs brought on their school children.
15 at one point.
16-year-olds were coming on, weren't they? But yeah, we looked a little bit more assured in the second half. I kind of made the point in the first half that we looked anxious, overhitting the ball, too many touches, passes falling short, and we looked a little bit more solid. But I suppose there's a little bit more seniority in the team across the midfield in the second half.
Yeah, obviously wholesale changes from both teams really at half time. Obviously Chambers came on. Which do you know what I actually felt, as somebody is right, James Chidwick there, I'll just put his comment back on the screen, rightly pointed out, Corey and Darber looked
Oh,
quality in that second
we
half.
said that,
Didn't
didn't we,
look,
on
yeah,
WhatsApp? Yeah, he
didn't
did
look,
look good. He did
yeah, he
look good.
didn't look out of place with
No,
Lucas Moura up the front still.
no.
Looked assured, brought a bit of balance to the left side, but still
Yeah,
no James Wilson. Is
no.
something
Weird that,
amiss
isn't it?
in
I mean,
injury-wise, or?
I don't know. Is he injured? Not being said, is it? Is he going somewhere else? They're going to try and get him as a senior pro off the books to help with the salary cap. I don't know. But yeah, in Derby, yeah, I was very impressed. He had some lovely touches. Looked assured. Didn't seem overawed playing in that stadium. Left-sided as well, left-footed. And he looked kind of chunky. He was well built, wasn't he? So yeah, I was impressed with him. He was a standout in the second half for me. But Wilson, yeah, I don't know. I'd love to know.
Yeah, I've got a comment here from Facebook. It shows as me because I don't know why it shows as me, but it's from Facebook. Ben Moore on Facebook. Thank you for joining in, Ben. Much rather get battered 5-0, but see a style being implemented, which has been shown 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1. It was a 4-2-3-1, right, Matt?
It was, yeah. I mean, you made the point on social, didn't you, Martin? Showing those Twitter Guardiolas. Yeah, it was the 4-2-3-1, wasn't it? Yeah. I mean, yeah. We knew we weren't going to win the game. I think I even said to you boys before we went on air, I thought it probably would be 3-0. It looked like it could be a cricket score, didn't it, at half time? But yeah, they've got some much needed confidence. They've played against some elite players, which you're not going to get in League One week in, week out, or in the leasing.com. So I can see why they took the game. I know Ipswich and Spurs have got a good partnership anyway. We've seen it with loans coming in from there previously. So all in all, I think it was a good exercise. I mean, we did shoot ourselves in the foot a couple of times for 2 of the 3 goals in the first half. But
yeah,
overall,
I just want to bring Joe in, Matt, on that point made by Steve Mays there. A lot of positives take out the game. Strong Spurs side. We showed some good shape at times. What were your exiting thoughts, I suppose, coming out of that second half? Much better, right?
Yeah, undoubtedly much better. I think set up so much better. It was just such a more positive outlook on the game, and you had much more bodies at the top half of the field. And I think it become a lot clearer that second half lineup probably has more first team players in it. I mean, maybe we knew that before kickoff anyway, but when we actually saw it, they come out completely different. It seemed that they had a lot more first team players, and it looked like that's going to be more the mould of the team. Some really encouraging stuff early on in that second period. Early on, I think Lancaster looked a little bit bright, and there was a couple of little tidy passes and stuff like that. But again, it was so frustrating because again, a lot of the time with Ipswich Town I'd seen, and I'm not judging or criticising, it's Tottenham Hotspur, but good in the first 2/3, and it's just that final third where you just even sometimes just want a little bit of luck to get a goal and then set everything off and hopefully get a little bit more action. But it was still a really much better performance, and to keep the score at 3-0 is also really encouraging as well. Regardless of who Tottenham brought on as well and stuff like that, of course there was the gap in quality did bridge a little bit, but no, some encouraging signs. And I think what we'd like to see at the West Ham game, particularly from a Town's perspective, is a sort of amalgamation of those two teams, if you like, the sort of the best of the Colchester and the best of today's Tottenham, and putting them all together. I must admit, I do agree with the cruncher about El Mazzouri. Where was he? I would have loved to have seen him in the second half. And I think what it became apparent to me, what Lambert was doing, what it looked like was, it became more of a fitness exercise than an experimental exercise, particularly in the second half, where it was just like, I need these players up to speed for the first game of the season. So perhaps that's why we saw Nolan come on and not many other changes, really. Whereas I think he was thinking, well, I could bring El Mazzouri and it's fine, but we're 4-5-0 up. I don't want to concede any more. And I think that was a case of just getting minutes into those guys who are going to be the core of the squad next year, I think. And that's probably why we didn't see those players features, although I would have liked to have seen them myself.
Yeah, likewise. It brings a bit different to the party of than the midfielders we perhaps have got. But I think you're right. Obviously, Nolan missed Tuesday night with a calf injury, fit enough to come on for the last 25, 30 minutes. But yeah, so maybe that shows where El Mizani is in the pecking order of things. Corey and Darba, a young player coming in, looked the part, right?
I thought he looked really solid, and I think that's the thing with defending as well. You don't want to be. You can see defenders when they not dilly and daddle about on the ball, but when they've got a lot of time to think about things, and when they're not really composed. And I think to come on and you've just seen what went on in the first half. You've just seen what was happening. Okay, it's a different team, so he's playing with different players, but essentially he would have seen okay, we've got Lucas there, got Son there. I'm going to have to be on my A game, and he took everything in his stride, absolutely every interception, and it was almost like he built into the game. He didn't get carried away. And I think, I don't even know if he's made how many first team appearances for you, any at all, or many?
No, he was scheduled to and then didn't for whatever reason. There's different rumours circulating on different social media platforms about why. But yes, certainly he looks good enough to be your third, fourth choice centre half at this level, right? If not starting.
Well, this is it. And again, that would all depend on where Lambert sees Luke Chambers next year, where a lot of the other centre backs are at the moment. I mean, the big thing is how many games are you going to play, Chambers? And will age creep up? I know sometimes it splits opinion. Fans love his passion and loyalty and everything like that. And obviously, I'm not going to get involved in that because it seems like the ongoing beef, the never-ending war. I don't want to get the divide on the Chambers opinion, but irrespective, he's going to be there. So, but no, I can imagine giving him a chance at a run of games. If he looks composed in this game, I just hope that Lambert took really good notice of that, because at 20 years of age, that's a talent to nurture for sure. But based
absolutely. Let's jump into the comment section. Don't forget, guys, watching, you can leave a comment that we shown on screen, discussed, or if you want to get involved and have your say, either via video or audio, then just ask for the link in the chat box, whichever platform you're on. Steve Mays, Ipswich will be a lot of League One teams playing like that, but can they turn it on every Tuesday and Saturday? Is the squad big enough? Well, the squad's certainly big enough, Matt, but can we turn it on every Tuesday and Saturday? What do you think about that one?
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. I still wonder whether Lambert's going to go back into this rotation thing. I mean, because it could be so many games. We're going to see rotation in the EFL Trophy. We know we're going to see.
Certainly so, yeah.
We're going to see that. But I don't know whether or not, if we get off to a good start, he might keep that solid team, that 1 to 11. But if we don't, we draw a game here or there, he might start tinkering and that might go back into the rotation. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Steve. I think playing like that will beat a lot of League One teams. Look, we're not be playing Spurs each week, are we? So, I think we can certainly take some positives out of that second half.
Gosh, yeah, it's about getting minutes, get into legs, but equally, you want to see mental error. Well, you don't want to see mental errors, but when you see mental errors, like I said at halftime, it's better to see them here today in front of nobody, but in front of the Tottenham Hotspur new stadium than it is Wigan at home, 3 points on the line, great start. You can take them back to the classroom, watch the tape and learn from it. Obviously, Joe made a great point there about Corey and Darber.
Very good.
But he did well there to leave the Chambers debate alone, because I've learned in life you're not talk about politics, religion, or Luke Chambers.
I'm not educated enough. I mean, I've watched him over the years at centre back. I definitely do not want to get involved. I just like to sit back with my popcorn and watch the comments, and that's just me.
Well, likewise. Waters, JJK, very pleased with that performance. Didn't disgrace ourselves against a really strong Tottenham side. I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm feeling sort of a little bit sorry for Cornell now, because he's been hauled at half time in these loads of changes, and now we're sitting there with first impressions count for everything, don't they? And we're thinking maybe he's not that good, but let's hope maybe he'll play again on Tuesday against West Ham and can maybe change the perspective that we've got of him.
Go on.
I was just going to touch on the previous comment about League One and playing Tuesday, Saturday, because I thought it was a really good comment. It was just one thing. Thanks, Steve. I just really wanted to touch on the thing with Ipswich, and I hope is one thing I noticed last year. It's definitely got the names and the squad. I think even potentially the size to say, yeah, it should be getting out of Championship. I just wonder about the balance of the squad. And are there too many players in the same positions that are exactly the same player or virtually the same player that isn't a different option? So having 2 right wingers is perfectly fine. I'm not plucking names, but would it be nice to have a right winger, traditional Guion Edwards? And I guess Lancaster's a poor argument because they are different players, but one's got more on the left side and one on the right. But I look in that central midfield and I look at the midfield options, and Downs, Nolan, they're all quite similar. And that's not to say to discredit any of them skews. They all do a very similar job, and there's 5 or 6 of them. And we're all talking about getting Dazelle a start, and we're all talking about getting Down start. Would it be Teddy Bishop's year? And so there isn't room for them all to do it based on, when you just look at the squad. And I think talking about that's why I think we saw last season a really good start to the year. But when the same style of play gets worked out by the other 23 teams in the league, when you come back to play them a second time around, I think that's when Ipswich could come undone. But they've got 2 windows to do it, and you've got up until October. Then that may be a case of someone having to gulp and getting rid of someone we might quite be fond of to bring in perhaps a left-sided central midfielder that's got a bit more flair, or someone that could open up the game up differently to what they've got at the moment. And I think there's just maybe too many similar faces in those positions that have got the same qualities to potentially cause problems, but it'd be about striking that balance. And every manager's trying to find it at every level. It's not Ipswich's problems exclusively, you know. It's one of those things, but it just strikes me as a slightly unbalanced squad.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people would agree with
I mean,
that. Go on.
I mean, the cruncher says Joe's nailed it there. You're absolutely right, Joe. And that's probably one of the reasons why the midfield wasn't particularly productive last season, in that we kept rotating the squad around, yet the midfield was never scoring goals. They weren't providing the assists because they were all very similar players. So, yeah, I totally agree with that. Very good point.
Yep. Christy.
Oh,
sorry,
no.
Joe. Christy, we can't be too negative. Need to keep things in perspective. There were some encouraging signs. And I think there were some encouraging signs. I think Joe's right in terms of style of midfield. And it kind of showed in the second half. We had a bit of the ball, but we lacked that penetrating pass, that cutting edge, that we didn't really threaten at all. No. But we looked comfortable in the midfield area. The cobblers, to me, how was Cornell? I think you know the answer to that. Your fantastic review was maybe right. James knew Cornell had a howler. He did, but he can learn from it. There's a time and a place to play football. When you're having, any player screaming down on you, it's not the time or place to play it. Cruncher, Joe has nailed it. Overload in the centre of the pitch. Need to trim down. James knew Enciala and Wolfenden looked half decent as a partnership. Can we see them partnering up in the season? What do you think on that, gents?
Maybe. I mean, I don't think we're going to see that in the league particularly, but maybe in EFL Trophy or maybe Carabao Cup we could do. Yeah, but I mean, they were partnered up when we were, got done 3-0 in the first half. So.
See, again, they all seem, there isn't, out of the 4 centre backs, 2 that are really good, 2 that we can reserve and intermingle. Yeah. They're all fighting for that place, every single player. And now, even though Chambers is more onto their level now as well, I know he'll, with the armband, will be a nailed-on starter, but form permitting. But to me, they're all very, very similar to say that's the nailed-on combination.
Yeah, obviously. Looking at Caden Jackson coming on, he did change us a little bit. We suddenly had somebody who could hold the ball and look to get in behind, but he's not a lone striker, right?
No, well, that was one of the problems we had last season, wasn't it? In the with Norwood and Jackson, Lambert felt like he had to play them together, didn't he? He couldn't really trust Jackson up on his own. So, but I don't know whether not when he was at Accrington Stanley, he played as one up top on his own. Maybe someone can tell me that. But we didn't really look like we was going to threaten today with goals. But Sears looked quite lively, didn't he, down the left-hand side? And he had some nice interplay with Jackson, brought Kenlock into the game a little bit down that left side. That's not really his natural part of his game, is it, Kenlock? You don't feel confident with him crossing the ball in or anything. But
Oliver Crow, comfortable in the middle second half because Spurs wanted it that way. Joe, before the game, you commented on making sure our lone striker wasn't isolated and getting bodies around him. Do you think we did that in either half?
Well, it obviously is certainly more encouraging in the second half, but I think that's because Caden Jackson's a more experienced player and he was leading the line a bit more confidently, and he's also got much more pace about him, so it looked like he was covering a lot more ground than, say, what Drinnan was, which might have been unfair on him. Again, with Caden Jackson, I just get the sense what I'd really love for him, because the work rate's clearly there. I wonder if he does sometimes in games get a little bit frustrated, like us all, but it's maybe more so than the next. But for me, it'd be really nice if he could invent himself as a sort of winger striker. I know he's played there, but perhaps actually say, hold on a minute. And maybe if the, Lambert and the striking setup sat down and said, look, we need a vocal point up here. Norwood, Sears, they're all in on the conversation. And really, if Jackson could make himself that left wing or right wing back and just say, that's your role for the season now. Okay, we can rely on you if we up front for injuries if need be. But see if he is there, get up and down those channels, getting stuff in. And I mean, as you know, with my links to Colchester, I've always seen Freddie Sears as a main striker, and although he can operate off the left, I think that maybe it could be a bit confused sometimes playing Sears on the left and Jackson through the middle. Maybe, Sears, we saw him today, had Ipswich's only credible shot on goal, really. Okay, it's a bit rusty early on in the season, but it wasn't far over the bar. But again, that also involves Norwood, where he's at, what he's going to be doing as well. So for me, Caden Jackson, I would like to see more. If he's not going to be a main man up front, and it's clear today, that's fine. Admit where your strengths are, and he could be a really, really good winger, second striker, particularly in League One, after seeing what we saw last season.
Certainly so. Midfield options, Teddy Bishop, Alan Judge, quiet game from both, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, Rich called it, didn't he, in the comments before, and he was thinking maybe Judge wouldn't make his starting 11. He did have a very quiet game, but as Joe rightly pointed out in the first half, we saw a lot of Dobra coming into that middle position, into that sort of middle number 10 position, didn't we? But yeah, I did expect Judge to step up a little bit more. I mean, he's a funny player, Judge, isn't he? We kind of accused him of last season of sort of overplaying. Trying to be too active in the game. So maybe Lambert's told him just to maybe take a step back. But in taking a step back, he's gone into the shadows a little bit, and we didn't really notice him. So maybe he needs
second
to find
pre-season. Got to remember that second pre-season friendly.
He did score Tuesday as well, of course.
He certainly did. Elliot Leader over on Facebook. My Warriors Ward playing 90. And we have no goal scorer without Norwood, Jackson. And Jackson is an athlete, not a footballer. I think it's a little bit harsh on Jackson there. I think he's a good player. I think, as James New here on YouTube says, Jackson played with Billy Nee. He needs somebody as a foil up the top with him, doesn't he? He needs a Norwood. Billy Key, sorry. Yeah. Billy Nee. That's me trying to do so many things at once. Billy Key. But he needs a foil. He needs that foil.
Yeah.
He can't operate. Go on.
Who's to say this foil won't be Hawkins? A bigger man. Who's to say that if things get a bit more, you need to be a bit more direct in games. I love, again, we all love seeing football on the deck and it being neat and tidy. But again, 20 minutes to play, I want to see more crosses going in the box sometimes. And I want to see those things. And if Hawkins, again, if we're looking at Hawkins and saying, right, well, he doesn't have the best goal scoring record, and neither does Caden. Hold on a minute. If Hawkins is up there taking that burden, doesn't need to score the goals, but he's causing so much havoc and opening up Jackson, then that could be Caden Jackson's perhaps last roll of the dice up front, if you like, with Hawkins up there. But again, while we go on talking about Jackson and Hawkins playing up front together, you still have Freddie, Sears, and Norwood. And we're looking at those. How do you ignore those two names going into a normal league match on a Saturday and having Hawkins and Jackson up there? To me, it just that seems a little unrealistic as a pairing that could actually happen.
Matt?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking, it's a very good point about Hawkins. It would have been nice. We don't know how often he's trained this week. It would have been nice to see him involved somehow. I imagine he would have played his style of game would have been more like how we saw Drinan today, just holding the ball up, maybe trying to bring the midfield into the game. We know he's not got a great goal scoring record, Hawkins, but maybe he would have played that Drinan role, bringing the midfield in. But it's a really good point. It's good to have options up top, isn't it, Joe? You're making some good points there. But when is Norwood going to be back? That's the thing, isn't it? When will he be ready? Is he going to be ready to go on September the 12th?
That worries me. That worries me because he's yet to play a pre-season friendly. He's yet to train too much, as we're led to believe. The season's fast approaching. He's not going to be ready in time, is he, Joe?
Well, no. In an answer, no. It's not. You can't. You can play a few games behind closed doors. You can play some intense friendly sessions. He's not going to be fit, and every player's in his advantage. He doesn't have as long to get fit. So, for example, even if he misses pre-season, it's only 4 or 5 games as opposed to 8 or 12, so it's a short pre-season because of all this coronavirus stuff. So that is in his favour, but if someone catches a bit of form or gets ahead of him, I just wonder with Norwood, just again, perhaps on the outside of things, there was so much bluster in the name. And I just wonder, for a guy that had always been the underdog in his career, if it's the biggest club he'd ever played for by some stretch in arriving at Ipswich Town, I just wonder if it's all got a bit too much for him, that first year, if he's just thinking maybe I rule the roost a little bit and he's on these summer holidays. I don't know specifically about stuff that's gone on, but I know there's, what ifs, buts and whatevers. But why, if everyone's had a good pre-season, then if he walks back in 50% fit, cater to him our number 10, stick him up front and he doesn't deliver, I would then be asking questions, again, at the management and stuff like that, because you can't just build a team around a 50% player whose toe may be in and out. I'm not saying at the club, but whether it's his fitness, whether it's his attitude. And again, I can't comment. He may be brilliant, and all this speculation may be nonsense. But I just got a sense that he thought he'd made it last season, and as we saw a minute ago, 11 goals from 28 games, based on purely the Norwood I saw in League Two and another place. I'd like to see a few more.
Yeah, absolutely. And last 5 minutes of the show, guys. So if you've got some comments, get them in the comment section. If you want to appear on the show, you can appear on the show. Lots of Twitter buzz during the game. Bring those comments. Stand on your opinions. Be brave. James New is being brave here. We're saying Drinan should get his chance this year. Being brave because he's having his say and putting it out there. What do you feel about Aaron Drinan now that maybe you didn't feel before the game? More impressed, less impressed, the same? Where's his arrow trending for you, Joe?
Well, up. up. Certainly, you don't score a couple in pre-season and it looked the other way. He's definitely looked good. And again, today, it's just, today I feel really sorry for him. He played in the wrong half. You know, if he played in the second half and he was involved more. But again, if we're going to look at details and the positives, look at even the small thing. Hunger. He was tracking back. He was winning balls in midfield. Okay, he held the ball up well. He was running into, corners with 3 or 4 defenders behind him. He's never going to turn and score from there. But if he holds the ball up and brings a play, wins a throw in, that's all you can ask of him against a team like that. So definitely, in my opinion, he's gone up in the pecking order. If his attitude's right and, he's playing, he's got to start scoring goals somewhere in his career and he'll find himself. And we'll find out if he's a cut, if he's not. But there will obviously be, I think Caden Jackson and Sears are just ahead of him. But the more he's involved, and it'd be good if he could perhaps get maybe just more than 45 minutes against West Ham, maybe an hour. And that would be really good to see if he could play in with the better players or the more being first team players. I'd like to see him playing with them rather than perhaps the second string.
Matt, did he show his youthfulness a little bit in the first half when the first goal? Obviously, the ball came into him, didn't hold it, bad first touch. Did he show that youthfulness, that naivety in the first half for you, or are you still trending up?
I suppose a little bit, I guess. But I mean, what I do like about him, and I've not really seen him play up until this last week because there's been the opportunity to see him. But I did like the swag he brought in his interview with the Town ITFC Twitter channel.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He sort of spoke like he fitted in, if you see what I mean. It's not like, oh yeah, I've just got my opportunity, but I'm going to get loaned out or whatever. It felt like he was coming across as he was part of that team. He's part of the setup. He's side by side with your Norwoods and your Jacksons and all that. So that's good. You want to see that kind of confidence. Yeah, I mean, he was going to make mistakes today, wasn't he? He's on the biggest stage he's ever played in.
Of course.
But we saw mistakes across the team, didn't we, in the first half, really? But I think I'll go back to my other point, really. Maybe his play is going to be too similar to Hawkins, but maybe he'll be the deputy to Hawkins. We just don't know.
Well, we haven't seen Hawkins yet to really know anything, obviously. But I liked your point there. Yeah, almost to fake it until you make it. We see quite a bit of that, don't we? But fake it until you make it. And I liked the interview. Ben Harris on Facebook, we need 2 strikers up front. Would you agree with that?
I think we've seen it before time and time again in League One and the Championship. For a team that's got good enough midfielders and defenders, it can fire you out of a division. I know 2 up top hasn't been the most popular over the last decade or so, but we've seen certain teams like the Atletico Madrids of this world and stuff. I know we're talking League One Championship in a minute, but it work effectively still. So again, I think back to, we've seen it over the years. The 2 up top in the Championship, even if it happened, first half of the season, you're playing 1 up top by December, you can just blow the league away if you've got the right balance. Yeah. In League One, I think if you're looking on paper, Ipswich are better than 80%, maybe 90% of the teams in there. Well, let's wait until the window's done and there's a few big teams, okay. But at Portman Road, seeing 2 up top, if we're still, if Judge or if someone comes into the number 10 and they're not creative enough, why not? You've got to go for it. And I think that's the thing. It's all well and good sitting back and waiting for a team to make a mistake. Put 2 up top, be creative, give Caden Jackson a 4. I'd be more interested to see, if Ipswich could get out the Championship and, and then look at playing 1 up top and stuff if you're challenging to get in the Premier League and stuff like this. But at the moment, in these divisions here, and particularly in the Championship, if you're good enough, stick 2 up top because the benefits are there to see.
Absolutely. Yeah. And Matt, Eric Clacton, Jackson is fast. But a bit slow and maybe making a few decisions. Do you go along with that? I disagree with it personally.
No, I disagree with that. I mean, he got 11 goals last season, 7 assists. That to me suggests he can see a pass and can create opportunities. I mean, maybe today he was a little bit slow, but
I just like the sentence. I thought it was quite funny. He's fast, but his decision making slow.
yeah, I did.
I like the call for 4-4-2 though. I prefer that. And I still get haunted by Hurst playing 1 up top, and they were so isolated, wasn't it? Remember Ellis Harrison being about 100 metres away from the midfield. So yeah, 4-4-2 for me.
Question from Elliot Leader on Facebook. Keep getting those comments and questions in, guys. Elliot Leader, if Norwood goes, do you think we need to sign a replacement with, or do we have a replacement in Drillen or Hawkins?
That's a difficult one, isn't it? I can't see Norwood going. It's only getting linked to Dundee United, and I just cannot see that alone there or transfer happening because of the money that he's on at Ipswich. I can't see that. I think you'd have to try and replace him, wouldn't you? I think you'd have to try and replace him because Hawkins and Drillen aren't that style of old-fashioned number 9, are they? That's going to be, we always used to like, I used to like Joe Garner. He used to put his foot in and score goals.
Love Joe Garner.
Yeah, that's what Norwood does for you. And we've said it before, he gives you edge. Norwood gives you some edge. We get accused at Ipswich of being too nice. And I think Norwood gives you the edge that you need.
Well, I think this is it. I think you've made a really good point. Who's going to come in and buy him? Who's going to take on the wages? Again, when we say take on the wages, there are plenty of clubs that can afford to pay Norwood's wages. Let's not get it wrong. But do they need a striker right now? And do they need a striker that isn't yet proven in League One properly? And the only clubs that would be looking at him that can afford him are going to be League One and above. As we're hearing, Dundee and stuff like that, I couldn't see him fancying a move up there. And of course, the door will always be open for him while he's at the club to lead the attack, because probably pound for pound on ability, should be the best striker at the club and scoring the goals.
James New, Drennan would be Norwood's replacement. That's big shoes to fill. That is really big shoes to fill there. I can't personally see it, just because if you look at Norwood's stats, 28 appearances last year. Let me just remove your comment there, James. I can't quite see the rest of it. 11 goals. That's 174 minutes per goal. It's a big ask for a player such as Aaron Drennan, isn't it, Joe?
Yeah, well, huge, especially when you're unproven in the Football League as well. It's all well and good going out on loan. And again, let's have a little look at it as well. He's done well at his loan spells by all accounts, because he's come back and clearly done well, because Lambert wouldn't have him involved right now if he hadn't. But he hasn't scored 10, 15, 20 goals in these loan spells. So he's not prolific. And again, you are in the team based on scoring goals, or at least who you bring into the play. Now, we're talking about Drennan as a striker, of course, but if he's going to be playing up there as a sort of bigger man, is he going to actually be providing more assists and not scoring really anyway? Will he be playing up front with Caden Jackson? So what kind of role would he have in the team? Because it is all well and good saying he could bear the burden. But I think, as we've seen today, even if you're playing in those leagues, the sort of teams, the Sunderlands, the Oxford, all these teams that are in League One, based on what I saw, although I thought he was efficient, I don't think he would be that good up front on his own in League One either, based on what I've seen today. But again, I could be proved wrong in the season, because he could actually flourish and do really well. We're watching some really strange football at the moment. We're watching knackered players. We're watching pre-season that's not even properly pre-season, because they've had so long off. It's really hard to judge where they're at, because he could now flourish, and we could actually be watching the first game of the season and he's gained 5 yards of pace. We thought, hold on a minute. See that, but these are the margins that we might not necessarily see until they kick a ball properly.
Yeah. Right. We're going to bring the show to a close very soon. So, Matt, I'm going to let you go, my friend, because I want to keep your powder dry for tomorrow's podcast here on the channel, 1:30, right?
Yeah, I'll see you all then, guys. Nice one.
See you tomorrow at 1:30 for the podcast, Talking Town, right here on the channel. Joe, I want to bring something from Twitter, because it hasn't been mentioned here in the chat. They've not used the platform or whatever. Style of play. A lot of people obviously were backwards and forwards in terms of Cornell and the goal, the second goal I'm talking about. Some saying that when we all ask for a change of play or a style of play that we play out from the back, and when the club brings it or tries to implement it, the very first chance we get, we all scream hoof, and he should have got rid of it. Where do you sit with your many years of experience in football on that debate? Me personally, as a fan, I want to see teams, if they can, play out from the back, but there's a time and a place, and you've got to put your boot through it there. I'll be right as fans to criticise. Where do you sit on all that? Putting the boot through it or playing out from the back, etc.
Well, as a fan, you're always right to criticise. We pay an awful lot of money to be involved in this. That's one point. It's true. It's everything's going up year on year through football. We pay, so we're very much right to criticise. It's a really, really important thing. But obviously, within reason. The goalkeeping situation, I think, and playing it on the deck. This is the thing. If you have a strategy and you start with it, right, and you're going to say at the start of the season we're going to play out from the back. You can't ditch it after the first 45 minutes. You've got to give it time to work. And This is time and time again, it's not going to be overnight. And if you're only exclusively playing long ball and you keep getting caught on the break, see it out for a few games, because you're going to be learning on the training field every week, day in, day out. You'll be learning more and more.
Yeah.
Changing something is fine, but you've got to learn how to change it and how to play with it. Now, the problem is, we've seen it. It works. It's guaranteed to work. No one can deny that playing out for that doesn't work, because look at Pep Guardiola's teams. Look at the teams across Europe. Look at what they've won. Look what they've done, all from playing out the back. They've changed football in many ways. But I think this is where some teams get a bit stuck, and it's being too stubborn in your ways. And today was a perfect example with Cornell. I wish I could pull it up now and actually show you, because I paused it on my screen and looked at the pass, because it's just never a ball that's on anywhere. It isn't on if you're a holding midfielder playing it to an attacking midfielder. It isn't on if you're a right back playing it onto a right midfielder. So just take out the goalkeeping element for it at the moment, whether a goalkeeper playing that back. It's a pass that's never on in a million years. So
it is. You're right.
he's just got it horrendously wrong. So that's something to take from it. But I think it's worth sticking with. But
Absolutely.
It needs variation, and that today is a prime example. You cannot pass out, and we've seen it. You've seen it. How many times have we seen it with Pep Guardiola's teams where they've given the ball away, and it's led John Stones. Can you remember John Stones? I think Man City won the league, and he gave the ball away directly about 4 or 5 times because they have the ball and they pass it out every single attack, and every now and then they will concede from it. Just very quickly on the goalkeeping thing though with Ipswich Town, which I didn't like last season, which I like at a football club. I think you need a number one. I know that football managers today saying, I want 2 number ones competing for that position. Nonsense. I want 1 number one that's going to play 46 games and 1 that will play in the League Cup. A youngster coming through. I think if you've got 2 people competing with each other, and that's why I don't think we saw. I think Holy's a good keeper. Didn't see the best of him last year because he was watching over his shoulder every 2 minutes. And the same, you can't have these keepers that are supposedly 50-50 chopping and changing each week. You need continuity if you're going to mount a challenge, particularly to get promoted. So,
and obviously Joe Hart playing for Tottenham, one of the reasons you hear in the press as to why he was moved out of Man City was because wasn't as good on the ball as maybe the goalkeepers coming in. You're right. Stick with it. You've got to play that way if that's the way you're going to do it. And obviously Paul Lambert, I think, wants to play that way. However, we saw in that game, prime example, second goal, you can't do it. And then 5 minutes later, because of the second goal, he put his boot straight through it. And knocked it long. There's a time and a place. Yes, you are implementing a style of play, but you've also got to have a bit of something between the ears. And no, it's not on. As you say, even like David Silva, you can't make that pass.
No, it's not on. It's not on.
It's not there.
No, it's not. And that's the variation with this. And this is it as well. And I think that's the thing. Pep Guardiola's team got found out. Loads of teams have got found out playing from the back, but notice in the third season they didn't as much. They didn't lose those because they actually went, as good as we are, we are £100 million defenders here. They probably had a conversation where we still can't do this 100% accurate every time. So that one time where it looks like I might not get the ball, it's going into the crowd, and there is nothing wrong in that. Do you remember football 10, 15 years ago? And people are probably calling me a dinosaur now. I'm nearly 30. But do you remember the roar that used to be from a ball being booted into Rose Ed when a counter attack? Now we get a ripple of applause or even a minor boo. That's the sort of thing. You protect your goal first from all costs and build from there. But again, stick with the philosophy. It doesn't matter that Cornell gave it away today. He'll probably his head will be quite low. But stick with it. But when the ball's not on, just get rid, and keep don't concede. That's the thing. Get rid, and that's the thing. Those things, what they lead to today. Okay, Son scored. But what else it could have led to? NCR could have brought him down and been sent off. Yeah. And then there's because they're stretching and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden it's a red card. It's one bad ball. It was never on. You're down to 10 men, penalty against you, and the whole game's different. All based on something which, you've overfought. Philosophy, just forget it. Just play the circumstances and the situation. You're never making that pass. Zidane, as you say, would never make that pass. David Silva wouldn't make that pass. Cornell, you can't make that pass. Neither could Holy. So just variation with what you're doing, but by all means support it and carry on.
Absolutely. And it's as I said, all afternoon long, it's a teaching point, and I'm sure Jimmy Walker, Paul Lambert will sit him down, and reiterate, yes, that's what we want to do, but maybe not necessarily in that way or that point in time. But there we go. So we are done for another afternoon's football. Ipswich Town not as successful as Tuesday night, but it's another 90 minutes in the tank. Players are building. Vincent Young come through it, and I'll be back tomorrow 1:30 with the Talking Town. Back at 10:15 with the non-league hour with Thomas Segan. So join me there if you love your local non-league football. As we run through the SIL and the Furlough None. Thank you, Joe, for appearing, and to Matt. And I will see you all with Matt and the Cruncher 1:30 tomorrow right here on the channel. But for now, we are done.